All right, it is Wednesday. Finally, it is 4:30 p.m. It's Central Time. It is office hours here on the Academy. Hey, Andrew, how are things?
Oh, pretty good. I think you just covered the great things about today.
The essence, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. No, things are going well. Gearing up for kids and everybody going back to school, and it's another busy time of year, Johan.
That's true. That's true.
Though I'm not sure how many times a year you and I have that aren't busy.
Well, probably been a day or two.
At least, at least.
Yeah,
So, yeah. How about you? Things going well?
not complaining, not at all.
Good. It's not 90 degrees and 100% humidity anymore. That's something to celebrate, I think.
That is so. That is so. But what about our little world? What's going on?
There's always something happening there, and it just so happens I came across a couple of things that I'd like to share today. Shocking as
Uh,
it may be.
I don't know, but I'll take it.
All right, there we go. First thing I came across today was a new post from Damien on Intune, PowerShell, and Graph API best practices. Uh, we've shared a number of Damien's articles on here, and they often surround those topics. So I would say he definitely knows what he is talking about here. This is a nice blog post that sort of goes through some of the basics and how you can get started with finding the graph endpoints that you might want to call when it comes to Intune, as well as, if we scroll down a little bit here, Graph X-Ray, which will also, we've talked about X-Ray a little bit on office hours before, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, but goes through how we can use X-Ray to also determine some of that information and help us write the PowerShell that we need to use in order to actually call Graph. And finding the right permissions. This is something that, if you've not worked with Graph too much yet up to this point, that's something that you'll really need to familiarize yourself with. Each endpoint is going to have its own set of permissions. Some of those are going to be more privileged than you may want. So, understanding those privileges and finding which ones you need for a given task is very important. So, highly recommend checking out Damien's blog post here. This is really great stuff.
Well, speaking of Graph, you don't know this yet, but I'm telling you now since we're here. We did put back the PowerShell course for Graph up on the Academy in quarter 4 this year on our schedule, and well, you are presenting, so
All right. Excellent.
figured this would be a good opportunity to mention it to you.
Perfect. I appreciate it. That was I had a lot of fun with that course, and I think it's a very useful one. Though I may be a little bit biased, that's great news.
Sounds good. All right.
All right. I also came across, for those of you using, let me bring this up here, app control for business policies. The Intune support team posted a blog post on Monday and how to troubleshoot some of the associated resources around using app control for business policies. So these types of posts we generally find very useful, and another tool in the toolbox for sure. And last but not least, this was recorded a little while ago, but our good friend Richard Hicks just had his RunAs radio episode posted last week. So Richard was on the show talking a little bit about Cloud PKI. As I said, Johan and I are big fans of Richard and his work, and the RunAs radio podcast. definitely recommend going and checking this recording out as well. It's not too bad. 45 minutes. That's an easy listen, I would say, especially with these two talking. But yeah, that was it's actually about all I had today. It's a fairly light day, surprisingly.
Well, I do stumble across two things. Well, one I obviously knew about because I wrote a blog post about it, but just for the fun of it, if I go ahead and share my screen, here, there was a note about this old friend. If we remembered Microsoft Silverlight, and unfortunately, yes, we do, or at least I do.
Oh yes.
I mean, at the time, yeah, it was a cool invention, but I cannot honestly say I miss it too much.
No, I agree.
But it didn't take many times for people to remember that, oh, yeah, right, the early days of Intune were using this. And of course, ConfigMgr, the old software center, were using components from this as well. And that was fun. So, no, don't miss it. And I do remember it. It had its time. That time is past, and here we are. But the blog post I'm referring to was this one here, because we had a discussion back and forth some of the office hours here about using WinGet to download store apps. And I don't really remember where we left off last Wednesday, but I know having a wee bit of trouble getting the license down for it. So the command line has actually been in the product for, or the store support has been in WinGet for quite a while, months and months and months. But Microsoft couldn't figure out the backend until very, very recently. So I was super excited to try to out this. I tried to download, as you can see here, the Windows Calculator application. Maybe a little bit hard to read, but I was trying to download that one. And it would just refuse to download the license for it. And then Jason mentioned that probably should be reading the text that is output in the command. I'm like, good point, sir. And it does say that in order to get the license, you need to have admin rights. And I'm like, okay, what admin rights? Quite mention that specifically. But it turned out that you need to have one of these roles in Intune. So fair and square, I went into my Intune portal. I borrowed Amy's account. I often do that for demos. She has a bunch of devices enrolled. It's perfect. And after going to her account and making sure she had been assigned that particular, or one of those roles, problem went away, and I could download the license just fine. So, long story short, if you actually read the command output, there is the solution.
Excellent.
And also, since I should mention that Jason Sanders, who helped me, he did go in and also updated their original blog post, the one that we shared the other, whatever week that was. It was, July 29. So it's a while back. So, anywho, that's what I had in mind at the moment.
All right.
I see we have some shout outs from folks over in Europe. Hi, Andrew. Another Andrew in the UK, this one. Amir, hello there. Matthew. Matthew actually had an MDT question, it looks like.
Indeed. So in his MDT deployment boot folder has a bunch of light touch PE ISO temp files. Is I think the first question here. So I think there was just a follow up just now, or at least the first comment. Have you come across those temp files before, Johan?
Not in the boot folder, but if I go to one of my MDT servers here, one of the one I'm using more frequently, this is what you may see, like this one if you're using let's see. It could be if you're using user exit script or something that could cause that file to stay behind, because I've been playing around with that quite a bit. But either way, these are harmless to delete. They are no longer in use, because the process goes through 4 different phases when it updates that boot image. I did blog about that a while ago. They are called user exits, where basically you have, every time you update a boot image, you have these 4 phases or stages that happens, and you can inject things in each of those stages. So we have been using that to, for example, inject the branch cache component, the 2.0, the toolkit into the boot image every time you update your deployment share. Other customers have been using this to make sure it's getting populated up to the Pixie server automatically every time you update the deployment share. So basically, if you have something you want to get done, when you right click and do an update, that's why we use those user exit scripts. Technically, I'm assuming you can have something that just looks for that when this phase has been done, and just go ahead and clean it out. If you want to have something done automatically. As to why they get left behind, I don't know. Same reason that there is still some opportunity for growth in the temp folder, because you may see a bunch of leftovers from the mount here as well, from MDT. So that's all I have on that one.
All right, and he did have a follow-up, can he delete those files? And you answered it. So
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
And they don't show up always either.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure if it's because I'm using a more recent version of 80K on this one or not. This is a 24H2 80K, but yeah.
All right. So Matthew had another question here too on the ConfigMgr side of things. Can you explain how and if you can automate the updating of driver, BIOS, etc. in ConfigMgr?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. This is something we do all the time. So in ConfigMgr, it is stupidly simple. Well, I guess it's a relative term. It's not too bad to have packages for BIOS and drivers being created. I happen to like Maurice's tool to do that, because it's fun to create maybe 1 or 2 driver packages manually, but then it gets boring, and I prefer automation. So I leverage that tool a lot. That's a tool we have showcased many times here on office hours. But the long story short is that if you go to MS Endpoint Manager, head down to Solutions, and for example, Driver Management here, this is the tool. This is a PowerShell script, a really long one with a GUI. And you simply select the models that you have. You select if you want drivers or BIOS or both. And that PowerShell script go ahead and create these packages for you. So that is the first part, to create a bunch of packages with content. The second step is to actually have the sequence deploy them. So if I go to some of my sequences here, For example, I can do my Windows 11 sequence I've been playing around with lately. There will be a step here that will go ahead and figure out the right package for this model and download that one. And you can do the same thing for BIOS. So I have one of those sequences here. That is not a sequence. Here we have sequences. So if I search for BIOS, so this is a BIOS update sequence that you can either run standalone, you can boot the machine on it, push out to existing devices, but the same story there. You have a script that figures out if a package is available or needed. It checks the version. And then for each vendor, there is a different script to call it. And also, I have condition to only run the Dell script if it's a Dell, HP if it's only an HP, etc. For driver updates, very, very similar. If I go back to this one and search for update, this is a very small sequence that does driver update only. So once again, it calls the script, but this time with the driver update parameter or switch to it. And then that script downloads the package, updates the drivers, and reboots the device. So the same solution supports bare metal deployment, updating just by booting a device on a sequence, or pushing out updates after the fact. So that's definitely one way to do it. Another option, if you have if you have ConfigMgr integrated or co-managed, so integrating with Intune, you can definitely leverage driver updates there as well, including BIOS updates. The only thing it doesn't support here is BIOS configurations. HP and Dell has some integration with Intune to do that, but this is the native Microsoft solution to do drivers and BIOS updates through Intune. Quite elegant. Very version 1 at the moment, but it works. It does the job. I do recommend the manual approval rather than automatic, but other than that, it works. What else? Nope, that was probably it.
Yeah, pretty good coverage there, I'd say. All right. Amir has a follow-up question for your WinGet comments. Because of that issue, if you wanted to, he's asking if he has the correct understanding that it couldn't be used in an automation script because the script can't be run as system and the logged-in user has no admin roles assigned. So you'd have to run this manually.
I don't know. I haven't tried. I have seen some automation projects around WinGet as a platform, but it's nothing I have tried on my own.
Yeah, I wonder if there's that authentication mode switch that you're using for an interactive authentication. Did you happen to come across any other options for that?
I have not.
Okay.
Maybe Google has.
That's what I'm trying to look for right now.
Let's see what the switch was I used for that. It was definitely not that machine, but it might have been this one. Nope. This one here then. Yeah, this was definitely the machine. I can tell you that. You can see it downloaded a license. Yeah, authentication mode was the switch.
Yeah, so the other, I just found the documentation. The other options that you have, or the other values that are available for it, are silent or silent preferred. There's also an authentication account parameter that you can use. It doesn't really specify if you can use these to automate this, but given the, let me highlight these right here.
Yeah.
Just giving the verbiage here in this documentation, it looks like there's some solid attempts can be made to try to automate this.
I mean, let's try this.
All right.
Let's bring up GitHub search.
Using your tools wisely, I see.
Well, trying to. So that was the authentication mode. And the other one was the authentication account, was it?
Yes.
Like this?
Authentication. Yep, exactly.
All right. And we threw in the language PowerShell into the mix. And we get nothing. I was hoping someone would have tried to automate it through PowerShell, but no. All right. It was worth a try. One person did one for the mode silent.
And it
forcing update for packages.
Oh yeah, okay. That was on the using the update command.
Yeah. All right. It was worth a try. Right now, don't know. We did our best.
Looks like it might be possible, but we haven't played around with it enough.
Yeah.
Great question, though, Amir. All right. We've got a troubleshooting, sort of a network question here from Milton. So, having an issue joining a VM to a virtual Active Directory domain controller using VMware Workstation. Both the machine and the domain controller should be sharing the same network on VMnet 19 with LAN Ethernet adapter. Seems that the VM trying to join can't resolve the domain controller's name through DNS, but can ping the IP address from the virtual machine. The domain controller is using a static IP address and has DHCP and DNS configured on it, and the virtual machine that he's trying to join is set to obtain an IP address automatically. Any tips that we can provide on troubleshooting that?
Yeah. Disable the internal VMware DHCP server on that virtual network because it has bitten me so many times. Basically, those DHCP servers, they start to argue with each other. And the one you want to win rarely wins. So on the network itself in VMware, either if you use the bridged one or the NAT one, by default it has a DHCP server or service enabled on it. Try disable that one and see if it helps. That's how I've seen. We had people using our hydration kit reporting in that issue as well, because the hydration kit comes with its own DHCP server. And that one starts to have an argument with the VMware one.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, yeah. So maybe that.
Right. Great tip. The only other one that I had on there, which might be an obvious one, but keep it simple, right? When the device does obtain that IP address automatically. I mean, test what Johan suggested first, because maybe it's pulling an IP from that DHCP server. But the other thing I was going to suggest is at least double check to see which DNS servers it's getting from that IP address or from DHCP.
It should also tell you which DHCP server it got it from.
Yes, exactly. Great point. So give that a look. Hopefully those things will help sort it out. All right. Intune Win32 apps question here. Is there a persist content equivalent for Win32 apps in Intune? We have an application that loves to not cache its installer correctly.
No, it's not not in Intune natively, but a Win32 app will happily be a wrapper script or run a wrapper script, and that wrapper script will do whatever you tell it to do. So if you tell it to copy the installation files to a folder first and then run the installer, it's going to do that. And since that's the folder that you manage, Intune will not go ahead and delete it when it's done with the setup, which it otherwise does. So that's a difference between ConfigMgr. As long as ConfigMgr has a space in its cache, it keeps the content there in Intune. However, when stuff is successfully installed and happy, poof, gone from the cache. I do have an example up on my blog. Probably not going to win any scripting awards, this one. But this is a PowerShell script that I run as a Win32 app to copy files and folders to a folder. So very, very simple script. So you can integrate that with your application, and then after it's copying the stuff, run the installer. Don't remember from the top of my head if PS80T had a caching option also, but I bet that script can be customized to do it if not. So yeah, maybe that.
Excellent. Great tips. All right. Noah has a situation here on co-managed devices. If there is a PC that is co-managed and it's been sitting pending for the last 4 days to get a policy and not going through, not seeing anything huge in the logs, I think these questions may be related, so I'm going to say both of them. We're trying to push out BitLocker policies, which is erroring out on GPOs. No GPO for BitLocker in that OU, so we're trying to push out MDM wins over GPO, but it's not taking. So I think any tips on where to look?
Yeah, don't combine group policies and MDM policies at all. Would be the tip to the same device, because even that MDM wins over GPO setting that has been available since Windows 10 1803, it's on a per policy base. For example, it will not work on Windows Update policies. I don't remember the top of my head if it does that same behavior for BitLocker policies, but that one is not reliable to use. So in this case, if you have devices that are in a hybrid mode, pick basically which one is managing policies on it. Either it's going to be Intune or it's going to be Active Directory, not both. That would be my tip. Anything you'd like to add there, sir?
No, I agree. It can be a little intimidating at first to make that switch over, but at the end of the day, it's much less of a headache when you're doing one or the other.
Yeah, it's just those, basically, it's the double administration that adds to it, and it's really hard to troubleshoot.
Yeah.
For example, not a single week go by without me reading some Twitter thread about Windows update policies not behaving like they should be behaving. Even from people that I know them inside out, are running into fun things, fun scenarios where they're just misbehaving, and that is often a collision between legacy stuff that is on the device from either a policy or from ConfigMgr, or both interfering with whatever you have in Intune. So, yeah, that's all I have.
All right. I wanted to highlight this comment here from Amir. His boss asked for his autograph this morning in Teams right after he saw last week's autopilot device rename discussion highlighted in his Twitter feed today. That's pretty awesome.
That is awesome.
All right. Jamie is asking, have you looked at the Windows Update Orchestrator service? It doesn't seem to be using Windows Update's GPOs to block online. It seems the only option for now is to delete the registry key for each update component.
I have not used that one. Anything you stumble across, sir?
No, nothing that I can think of. But if something comes to mind, or if anybody in the chat has come across that, please share. And if something does come to mind, I'll share as well. Richard is asking us over on LinkedIn, any advice on how to remove multiple versions of .NET Core, SDK, etc. from a machine? Should we also remove Visual Studio if it's installed, then reinstall with the latest versions?
I haven't done much work on removing .NET versions from a device. I don't really have any good guidance on that one.
Oh, same here. Not for broad deployment.
Sorry, Richard. No good answer on that one.
No. My easy but not very helpful answer would be a little bit of scripting to figure out what, the most recent version is installed, and then try to do some silent uninstalls there. But I don't know how helpful that'll actually be to you, Richard. So, sorry, nothing.
In that case, I can think I can be even more unhelpful. Just reimage the device and put in the version you want.
There you go.
Including Visual Studio.
Right. Yeah, if Visual Studio is the only thing using those, absolutely. The second part of your question, Richard, remove them all, reinstall Visual Studio, and you're good. Or, like Johan mentioned, just reimage. Guaranteed it cleans.
F12, yeah.
Exactly. All right. Any thoughts on the M365 app type versus Win32 apps? For example, everyone gets the normal Office suite. Then we want standalone apps for Visio and Project. Adding those is slow, even when the XML is configured to only add and keep existing versions.
I mean, I'm biased, but I like the control you get from a Win32 app, even to install Office. I know it has a ready-made app type in Intune, but it seems to give you not only faster downloads because of the settings you can configure, but also gives you a lot more flexibility on how you want to deal with it. For example, you can decide whether you want to put all the Office files in the package that is being downloaded, and then of course you have to keep updating that package all the time. Or if you just want to launch the setup itself, together with the config files and have it download on the fly the latest versions at deployment time. We've been showcasing that solution from Johan and John Kettle and whoever else that wrote that post. But up on MS Endpoint Manager, they spent some good time on evaluating Win32 app with Office or the Microsoft 365 apps in it versus running setup versus the default type in Intune.
Yeah, back in January, Matthias Melkerson actually wrote sort of a follow-up of sorts, or a spiritual successor to Jan's blog post. In fact, he calls out Jan's blog post here. But sort of building on Jan's solution and still using Win32 apps. And this post does include how to build Visio and Project, though they are really just those XMLs largely. But perhaps this was the other additional one you were thinking of, Johan. This is a very nice blog post.
Indeed.
So I will put that in our list of links for this evening. All right, let me find my spot here again. Oh, just a follow-up comment here from Noah. We tried to implement BitLocker via SCCM, nothing but errors, so Microsoft said co-management and push out policies for BitLocker only via Intune.
I mean, there are plenty of organizations using BitLocker management in ConfigMgr, so I'm surprised that they instead leaving it as an option, but all right. So long as there is nothing else interfering, then you should be good. But if there are leftovers, then you have conflicts, and Intune won't tell you that you have conflicts unless it's something else in Intune conflicting. So you have to review those devices, making sure there are no leftovers from either old MBAN policies, from ConfigMgr BitLocker management policies, or from Active Directory group policies that have been configuring these settings that you're now trying to set through Intune. It ain't easy.
Mm-mm. Right. I was just reading a couple of follow-up comments here on .NET. Definitely some. It's a tough one because there are so many flavors and versions. It's like getting on a device and how many, Visual C++ runtimes do you see, right? Can be the exact same scenario with .NET.
Andrew was mentioning that there is a cleanup tool available. Apparently, I haven't tried that one, but that could be a good tip. As long as one of the official ones, I'm assuming so.
Yep. All right. Matt's joining us over here on YouTube and has a question about the company portal. Every time I deploy the company portal, I get a high number of failures. How can I deploy it using the new Microsoft Store? Also targeting users or devices, basically. Or assigning to users or devices, sorry.
Yeah, so that one has also been one of the problem childs because it was often deployed as a non-new store application, so the legacy store applications in the past. And if it was installed, forget the order. If it was either installed as a user, you try to install the new one as system, or the other way around, system and then user, you had to do a bit of cleanup first for it to work. And Ben Whitmore put together a pretty extensive write-up on that issue, and also a script that can help you do the cleanup. Not sure how valid that one still is, but it was very much valid at the time the new store apps were added into Intune, and people wanted to deploy the new company portal that way. That's the only thing I can think of there. Do you happen to have that one up, or shall I go?
I think, was it actually Brian Dam's post on the Patch Tuesday blog? See if this is the one you were thinking of. Or maybe we're thinking of two different blog posts, because this blog post referenced the if you assigned as user first and then tried to assign as system.
Might have been that one. I might have. No, it was the reset Apex script.
That's, as I was scrolling down here, that's actually in this article, and now I see Ben's name there.
Ha! We were both right.
That's right. Love it when that happens.
Yeah. So maybe that. Maybe try that.
Add this to our links as well. All right. Oh, we had a follow-up comment on here as well. We had a high number of failures on company portal associated caused by a hardening framework GPO that was disabling WinGet. So another thing to
as well. And just to follow up for Matt's question there, I saw the comment there regarding that they are indeed using the new store, and then absolutely yes. But if it has been previously installed as an older from the old store, it's actually the same store. It's just a different front end to it, but the legacy style, then you can have problems. But it was a good comment there around the hardening policies too.
All right. I have another question over here on YouTube. Trying to find the best way to deploy new teams via Intune, either through Win32 app or a WinGet download and using as a line of business app. Perhaps there is a better way. So I found we had this question a few times back towards the end of last year, and Florian Salzman had a blog post that we had referenced a couple of times here, and I think this might be helpful. So this will actually deploy the new teams and clean up the old, which, depending on where your organization is at, you may not have to worry about cleanup. But anyways, this was using a Win32 app and a PowerShell script. So I think we had some of our viewers had some luck with this as well. I haven't used this specifically to push it out myself, but
soon Friday, deploy to production.
That's right. I will share this one again, though.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. All right. Checking to see if there's anything else I've missed or if we're caught up for the moment, because we still have a whole 14 minutes left.
That's like a lifetime of questions.
Yeah, it is. Okay, just a follow up here from Andrew regarding .NET framework changes, updates, installs, etc. Be wary. Teams does have some dependencies on .NET, and probably various versions as well. So, great tip, Andrew. Thank you.
So yeah, my F12 solution still holds.
Yep.
I feel sorry for all the folks that had to do that recently with unplanned F12s. Learning the hard way that I didn't have bitlocker recovery keys available, and well then, F12 it is.
That's right.
Or use bitstick and F9. All right, I do not see any other questions coming, but we do have 12 minutes left, so anyone out there share something, by all means, please do so.
Yeah. Just comment here, follow-up comment. .NET updates don't remove the old versions, which I get, but I don't like it.
Yeah, it can be a lot of dependencies on given versions, so yeah.
It's easy to become something of a collector with .NET versions, right? On a on an endpoint, depending on how many applications you've got being installed. That's for sure. Andrew's asking, any tips or 3 top areas to read up on or look at the moment? Well, I added the at the moment, but
Well, I am a bit biased on that part, but definitely check out the new community. That's steadily growing. I'm looking for more people to join, so that will be one.
definitely.
Graph is coming up, of course, as I mentioned earlier, and for whatever reason, upgrading to Windows 11, I started to see an uptick in number of attendees. It's like there is only a year left or something to leave Windows 10 behind, and organizations realizing, oh darn, we need to get moving.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, we see 4 times the amount of use on that one right now compared to last year at the same time.
Yep. I would add, though, I think us and the world have been harping on about it for the last couple of weeks, but Laps and BitLocker, make sure that you have an understanding of where your recovery keys are being stored. Deploy Laps is my simple recommendation there as well. But know how to configure that. Laps has come a long way if you haven't looked at it in the last year with the new version of Laps. Those 2 are very much top of mind for me at the moment, and for a lot of others, I imagine. All right. We've got a question here from Sarah over on YouTube. Struggling with getting dynamic variables to work in task sequences for driver downloads. Any hints or suggestions?
The dynamic variables, they are quite straightforward. I actually spent a good hour and a half with Mike Terrell today updating some of those for a customer. I haven't seen any real issues with them. The wildcards are a little bit unpredictable, but they are documented. I'll probably show one example if I steal the screen again.
Sounds good.
So in any given ConfigMgr sequence, You can, of course, deal with, like I have here, Maurice's solution to deal with driver updates, where you have a single script that provides the content, but I'm using dynamic variables action that the question was here about. So set those variables that the script is using. But even in dynamic variables, you can set any variable that you like. So in this case, if you set a custom variable, you can go ahead and my build type or whatever it's going to be. It's going to be a virtual machine. I can set that as a variable and it will do it. But I can also add in a rule that say if the variable happen to match this one, which is unique for the dynamic variable step. This is like the Microsoft version of the good old gather script that has been around in the community for a long time. But I can do a like here, and I can throw in a wildcard, so either a star or a question mark, and I can say virtual, or I can say VMware, whatever that might be. If so, I want to set something. Dem1 equals test. Good Lord. Try this again and try to pick a variable this time. There. So I have not seen these failing when setting variables. For troubleshooting purposes, you can of course ditch that one and go ahead and set just a regular task sequence variable. Call it something, demo2, test2, and then it's going to set that variable. But I mean, this has been around for, I don't know, 5-6 years now. If there were major bugs with it, I think we would know by now. So, yeah. Anyhow. Otherwise, I would have a little bit more information about it to be able to help. But this is how this one works.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
So we did have a couple more questions come in, but I wanted to highlight Andrew's comment here first. Hope you don't mind the questions. Not at all. We love questions. We never mind the questions.
That's why we're here, yeah.
Exactly. On that note, Andrew had another question here. Any interest with MDOP? The recovery tool sets, often overlooked, would have been really useful with the CrowdStrike issue. They have the option to build in recovery options, so I was curious around use cases with that, basically, with those tools.
I mean, they are, even though they're old, I mean, they're from 2015, there are still good features in them. As recent as last year, I used the reset password option. I think I even blogged about it at some point. But these different tool sets that are available when you boot, it's a bit hard to see the screenshot here, but the locksmith function was the one I was using. But that won't have helped too much for a CrowdStrike scenario here, because you still need a bitlocker key to unlock the volumes. You need to do that with a command line or through a script to unlock that one. But the toolset is good, even though it's no longer being developed. Haven't tested it in latest WinPE either, but it does work in at least 22H2 or WinPE.
That's funny. I was just going to ask if you knew if your blog post from 2020 on adding useful tools to your WinPE image also would still apply, because that you mentioned Dart in there.
I mean, it still works. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. All right. So we got a couple minutes here. We'll try to get through what we have left. We'll do our best. Noah is asking, what is the best way through SCCM to remove a built-in store app?
Script to run a remove fx package type command, I would assume, unless it's installed by WinGet and you can use WinGet for it.
Yeah, there are a couple of posts out there about this, a few different options.
Screen?
No, I'm trying to remember the ones that I'm thinking of. I'll find them and add them to our links for this evening, even if we're not going to showcase them right now, since we're run up on time.
Fair and square. Yeah.
All right. Dan's asking, do you have anything in PowerShell Intune installer scripts for MSIs that install to check that no other MSI is running? We wrap our MSIs, and when Intune pushes them, they all hit at once.
Yes. Phil from our team wrote something like that for our installer. May have that script. Let me take a quick look. Where do I have that one? This is not the smallest wrapper script. Here. Check for other MSI installs in progress. Apparently using this function, feature, Windows thing. So maybe that.
All right. And then last question I think that we have here, if we want to give techs access to BitLocker keys, are most folks using the built-in helpdesk administrator role or creating a custom role? So assuming you're referring to Entra here, I would say it depends on your organization. The helpdesk administrator role, of course, has more permissions than giving access to read BitLocker keys. That will also allow the help desk administrators to reset passwords and things like that on any user in the tenant. So if your help desk doesn't need all of those additional permissions, absolutely I would create a custom role for that. I believe the BitLocker read permission is something that can be assigned to a custom role. So, as always, it depends.
I remember seeing a Twitter thread from John Markham about they were having a hard time getting an app registration, the right permission to it, but were successful with the user account. So yeah, maybe that.
Yeah, the actual Entra roles that you would assign to a user, I'm fairly confident you could do that with a custom one.
All right. Well,
Cool.
We are definitely up on time, everyone. Thank you so much for chiming in with great comment and great questions. Andrew, as always, rock solid. Thank you, sir. And we hope to see you again next Wednesday. Have a good one, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, Johan. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.